So funding frameworks. This is how you structure your funding for any given round. Now, the frameworks are specific to your business's geographic location. So this is where the business is operating. The revenue, this is either projected or true tax return numbers. Your industry slash or line of work. So this is the classification of the business being funded. The credit profile, both on the personal and on the business side, and the entity structure. Now, before I bring in this last piece of what a funding framework isn't, is I want to say this. I also want you to think of a funding framework as the products and the banks that are going to be used to acquire the funding. That's what a funding framework is. So, in a simple form, aside from this, is if I know I'm in the real estate space and I need access to $75,000 for maybe some Airbnb projects that I have coming up, then I am going to go after Bank A, Bank B, and Bank C. That, in a nutshell, is a funding framework. So, wanted to add some additional clarity on that. So, as you're thinking through it, you're able to see how this all pieces together. Now, a funding framework is not a one size fits all. I know that we like to pretend it is. I know that sometimes we surf on YouTube trying to get content. Heck, I'm out here putting out content for you. But the reason why I wanted you to know this piece is because I don't want you to get disappointed if what you tried for one LLC doesn't work for your second LLC, if maybe you have multiple entities, right? Reason for that is because the way that one entity is structured is going to have a completely different, the bank is going to have a completely different lending appetite for maybe if you have a real estate business versus you having a consulting business. Some banks may not want to touch the real estate business, but they'll want to go all in on the consulting, or vice versa. Some banks may say real estate or agriculture. Yeah, we can touch that. Let's rock. As a matter of fact, these are some of the products that we have specific to that business if you're investing in this area. Always good to know. And that's why I always tell our clients, hey, the way that you fund one business isn't always the way that you fund the second business, which is why you really want to know what you're doing inside and out, which is as you're setting up your funding frameworks, we always like to remind them of this piece right here so that way you can reverse engineer it and then insert it into whatever it is that you're doing. So when it comes to a funding sequence, this is going to be the cadence or the timeline of how you go about with your funding frameworks. So remember what I mentioned earlier, that if I'm hitting Bank A, Bank B, and Bank C, that's my funding framework. My funding sequence is I'm hitting those banks and I'm looking to get access to this capital in the next 30 to 60 days. That's my sequence. That's my cadence. That's like my timeline, which is what you see here. In case you're wondering, what's the little image on there? I'm going to break it down for us here in a minute. An example of that is you plan on getting $75,000 in business credit or working capital, then you'll most likely need two funding frameworks or two sets of funding frameworks. If again we're playing a bit more, I would say conservative, and that'll take us about 90 to about 120 days, and that's more conservative. Could be way more than this. We're just giving ballpark numbers here, right? And so the way that this breaks down is the following: Bank A, Bank B, and Bank C. Let's say we'll hit it right here, and let's say we get a grand total of 50K. We're gonna have this rest and pause period. Now you're probably wondering, Irv, what is the purpose of a rest or a pause period? Why are we doing that? There's a couple things, like a philosophy that I have with this, and I want to give you my train of thought on it. Really twofold. Number one is I always like to see what was approved, what was denied, and how can we reassess. Before moving on to the next funding round, is there something on the first funding round? So let's say we went to Chase and they denied us for a business line of credit. And we know for a fact there's no way we should have been denied for a business line of credit. The business was dialed in. We provided tax returns. We flexed our liquidity muscle, which means we had about 15K sitting in the account. We have a 780 credit score. I've been banking with them for 2 years. There's no way we should have been denied. And so I am maybe hitting the reconsideration line. I'm speaking directly to a business banker, and I'm saying, okay, why were we denied? And I'm actually getting a thorough case of why we were denied. Oftentimes you'll see, oh, the reason you were denied was because the address that you put on here. Is this your address? No, that's not my address. My address is 123 Main Street. You guys had 123 ABC Street. That's my old address. Oh, sorry about that. Let's resubmit the application. And it doesn't cost you another inquiry. Versus if you would have kept going into maybe your next funding round, you would have burned another inquiry or you would have opened another account. Now Chase sees that, and when you try to go back, they'll say, okay, at this point, you're just credit fishing, or you have way too many accounts, so you're opening up too fast, because they're more, one, inquiry sensitive, and two, they're more new account sensitive. And so the less accounts that they see opened, the better it is in your case. Once you get access to that credit line, you can then go in and get access to future credit lines, right? So that's the first thought behind why you want to rest and pause here. The second reason is because, like anything else, you have access to this newfound capital. So, not like anything else, where do we deploy it? If you have a legitimate plan, before you go out and you start aggressively trying to acquire capital without knowing where it's going to go, because debt is, I like to refer to debt as a weapon. It can work for you or against you. Okay, we know for a fact that these next two projects are going to run us right around 45K. We have access to 50. Let's deploy this out into the market, and then let's move into our second funding round. So then we would hit either the second set of products at the same banks, or another three banks. So banks EFG. So we did ABC. We'll do banks DEF as an example, and then we'll rinse and repeat the process. Now, I do have some reasons for why you want to set up multiple funding rounds in these sequences. Is you don't want to get flagged by banks and lenders for what they call credit seeking, which is what I just broke down with Chase. You start to look desperate to them. This allows time for some organic spending with those new accounts. So there's nothing better and healthier to a bank than, let's say I have a business line of credit and I get access to that 35K line. I use 5K for payroll. I was able to receive my accounts for some projects that we did. We then pay off that account. I'm back up to a 100 or to a 0% utilization, meaning all my accounts are paid off. They see, wait a minute, this person, or this business rather, has been, they've been with us for 30, 60 days. They've used up, let's say, less than 20% of the allotted amount, and they've paid it right back. That's how they start then measuring you as a risk indicator of they've been responsible. Let's bump them up a little bit more. Let's do 50. Okay, let's bump them up a little bit more. Let's do 65. And then what you can do to take it to the next level, I don't have it on here, but every 90 days you can go in for quarterly. You can go in for quarterly reviews. And so what you do is, hey, last 3 months, last 90 days when I came, I know that I mentioned my numbers were at 25K a month. We've actually doubled since, and we're actually at 50K a month. Here's my bank statements over the last 90 days, or here's some of the deposits that I've done into this account. And so I wanted you guys to review it so that we can, we have some big projects coming up. And so I wanted you guys to do a manual review so that we can go back out and acquire bigger projects, because I want to keep doing business with you. Awesome. You'd be surprised how many times a product gets bumped up without you having to burn an inquiry or having to go out and fish for more credit, just off that simple conversation and actually having documents and a legitimate business to actually prove that. You'll get a bump. Sometimes it's 100% bump, so you'll go from 25 to 50, 50 to 100. Sometimes it's smaller, sometimes it's 50 to 75, but it's usually easier to fish inside of the same, what I say, pond than it is to try to go out into an open ocean, right? So that's why I like having the organic spend on there. Next up is having too many new hard inquiries too quickly. That's a big red flag to the banks. Banks monitor too many new accounts that just opened. If you're wondering how do they do that, they use SPFE. They use not CoreLogic. They use SageStream on the personal side, because remember, you're personally guaranteeing all of these products. They use early warning systems as well, or early warning service, I should say, as well. EWS. They use them. And then lastly, you want to see what was approved and what was denied, and then readjust, which is what I broke down on that piece. So if you missed it, rewind, I'd say 2-3 minutes prior, and just listen to that sequence of how I broke that down, because that is crucial.